When my partner and I were furnishing this place, we'd go see a restoration hardware dining table for $5,000 and we're like, surely somewhere in New York City has this table and is willing to part with it for $2,000. But how do you match that latent supply with the demand? And so I think there will be better ways in the future for us to have inventories online of things we own, have people able to bid on them, handle a lot of the sort of frictions. And yeah, maybe LLMs are a great use case can you have a little AI chatbot that chats with a bunch of sellers on your behalf and then agrees to one and handles a lot of the logistics. So it's a very greenfield opportunity in my mind. And we've seen a number of billion-dollar companies built in the startup world, but I don't think we've really seen the end-to-end resale platform that I think can be a $5 billion or $10 billion commerce company.
Hey everyone, welcome to the third episode of All Chat, a podcast where we're aiming to deliver an unfiltered view behind the scenes of some of the most interesting and current topics within the gaming industry, startups more broadly, and venture capital. Today, we will be discussing the future of shopping online, and I'm excited to be joined by several new faces as we dive into this topic. First, we have Emily Yang, better known as pplpleasr, one of the leading digital artists creating at the intersection of technology and culture. She's joined by Rex Woodbury, a former partner at leading global VC firm Index Ventures, and more recently, the founder and managing partner at Daybreak, as well as the author of Digital Native, a leading newsletter with over 50,000 subscribers, covering the latest news and views on consumer tech and startups. And finally, there's Amber and myself, partners at Patron, an early-stage venture firm with a strong focus on gaming consumer startups. Prior to joining Patron, Amber was a YC and Forerunner-backed founder that built a startup in the community software space, which sold to Discord, where she spent a few years leading the company's efforts to scale into non-gaming communities. Prior to Patron, I helped to scale Riot from 0 to 1, joining the company before League of Legends launched and helping to build out publishing and esports as Riot developed into one of the most valuable gaming companies in the world. Now let's dive into our discussion about the future of shopping online.
Maybe we can start by talking a bit about Discord. You guys are both prolific users of the platform, and clearly it's been evolving a lot in terms of how Discord is supporting shopping and creators. You can now buy downloadables, whether it's recipe books or photography courses, and just excited to hear from both of you. What do you think about that space? Maybe Rex, we can start with you because Daybreak, you have a Discord community, and curious what you're saying.
I know, much to the chagrin of some users. I mean, I think a lot of people said, "Why didn't you do Slack?" And the more kind of millennial crowd. But I thought, you can't be a consumer technology investor or sort of live and breathe digital culture in the internet without trying out Discord. So it's a nice forcing function for people to go there. And I always find it a bit more kind of a wild, chaotic, frenzied, community-centric place. Often when I'm talking about my interest in community, which is kind of a broad investment theme, and one of the reasons that I love tech, I point to the 19 million, weekly active servers on Discord, and you can find, them for so many different interests. But that always kind of excites me of how kind of on the internet, no niche is too niche. And I often kind of quote out Jack Conte from Patreon, I think has this great quote where he says, if you grew up in a small town with 1,000 people and, you're the only person interested in some niche thing or with some identity, you're very lonely. But if you come online, 1 in 1,000, I mean, there are 4.5 billion people online. That's 4.5 million people who are kind of like you, and you can find your tribe. And so, when I think of Discord, I think of kind of the connective tissue for those communities. And when it comes to commerce, I mean, I think commerce is a natural business model to layer onto any kind of place where you have a lot of attention and eyeballs. And it makes a lot of sense. I think, a company that I know well and have spent a lot of time with is one called WHOP. It's spelled WHOP. And the website, I think, is WHOP.com. And Steven, the founder, is sort of this young savant who used to build sneaker bots and sell sneaker bots online. And WHOP is kind of the infrastructure for selling access to an IP proxy or a bot, or very commonly Discord communities. So it's a paywall a lot for Discord communities. So I think it's natural to see Discord kind of integrate a lot of the natural features that people were already doing through different businesses.
Right. And when I was at Discord, that was something I was working on, is just uncovering the millions of dollars, like the very thriving economy that exists in all of these Discord servers, whether it's sneaker bots or just digital goods. So it's cool to see the platform fully evolve to support downloadables. And I guess, Emily, for you, you have your home on Discord too, right?
I mean, I come from more of a digital internet crypto background, and everybody in the Web3 space typically surrounds their communities in Discord. And for my own company, Shibuya, we have a Discord community as well. But other than the sort of the public community where, this is where our fans come to sort of talk about, the latest content that they watched and discuss, the latest chapter of the anime and also what's coming up. And for internally at Shibuya, we also manage our animation production in Discord as well. It's funny because I actually, asked Amber to connect me with somebody at Discord, and we literally wrote up an entire doc about why Discord is better than Slack for even just managing animation production. Even just, a lot of elements from the UI is just better and more straightforward for Discord. And also the calling experience in Discord is so much better than the one in Slack. And so we find it really funny that right now, at least in the industry, traditional animation and visual effects studios use Slack mostly for internal communications and managing their production pipelines. But we've started using Discord for Shibuya internally, and it just works so much better. Like it's 3,000 times better. And this is not a paid sponsor.
This is sounding like
I don't know what to say.
Hashtag
As a
spawn.
millennial, Slack is not ideal.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool because I think that it's so low friction now to just buy like any type of fun, customizable like avatar decoration or cute little like skin within Discord. Like, do you see a future where, Emily, people can, like buy and sell and trade animations or like within your server? Or how do you think about like digital goods or courses? Because you also have your Skillshare course. I do, right?
Yes. I think that the good thing about Discord is you can build a bunch of custom bots. And so, whether or not people want to like buy and trade animations, I think is to their own accord. I myself have my own reasons why I would prefer those to be on chain because, provenance and all this kind of stuff. But I think that even just within Discord, we built our own bot called Arisu, which is, the Japanese take on Alice. But, you can do a bunch of custom commands. And then you can also, we even built, because we were working on like an IP with Bruce Lee. So then we built a Bruce Lee wisdom bot where you can just summon commands and then it will just spit out, random Bruce Lee wisdom from time to time. Just fun things like that you can't do anywhere else, I think makes it so much easier and more exciting to manage a community who then, even if your community managers are, let's say, offline, they can sort of use these automations that you've built to interact with the platform when, a real person cannot be there for whatever reason.
Yeah.
How do you guys think about using communities to like organize commerce? So I think Rex talked a bit about WAP and like sneaker bots, and you just think about like there are a lot more of this kind of like group organization around like finding what to buy, trying to get more leverage with like buying as a group. So I'm just curious like how you think platforms like Discord, as an evolution of like Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups, is changing like how people actually shop, like how you actually think about like forming communities around the act of shopping.
I mean, I think it's all in how you actually integrate a seamless commerce experience into a more social community experience. I met a company recently that was kind of doing it with the recognition. The kind of key insight was that a lot of these communities have sort of one person who is often looked to as the influential person or the expert. And so they were giving that person kind of easy tools to embed an easy link for kind of next generation affiliate, where they could say, I'm an expert on, fixed up Toyota Camrys in this like car enthusiast marketplace or community, in one click, here's a way for me to get attribution. I think it's a tough model. I mean, I've met like dozens and dozens of companies at this intersection of creator and commerce over the last few years, and have been always kind of interested in what is the right model, especially when we always, like any good venture investor, you're like, but in China, social commerce and this works, and why not in the West? And I think there are subtle nuances. And so, I work with one of my investments is a company called Flagship, where the team was out of Instagram, built a lot of the creator and commerce products, and had the insights that, you really needed to go through creators who direct their communities to their storefronts. And so what Flagship does is basically anyone with an online following in under 5 minutes and just a few clicks can launch their own boutique storefront that they can white label and personalize. And you go from, really being an influencer who is someone just spouting kind of hashtag sponsored on my page to the next generation of small business retailer. So in some ways, I think of it under the hood as more of a B2B marketplace akin to Fair between brands and retailers. But in this case, the retailer isn't the brick and mortar mom and pop on Main Street. It's a woman with, 80,000 followers in Idaho who's really good at home decor influencing. And so that's really, I think, well-aligned business model where, for consumers like us, we get to kind of shop recommendations in a much more natural way, which we already are doing, but, in a sort of more organic way. And the creator is actually a small business person. And then brands love it as a new acquisition channel where, they're all facing rising CACs and really struggling with how to acquire customers efficiently post ATT. And so it gives them a new, nice kind of scalable way to do influencer. So I think like things like that are really interesting, but it again, it relies on the influencer to drive the community and the traffic to the store. It might be more difficult if it's actually just more organically in a Discord server or something like that.
Yeah, because I think one thing we talk a lot about between myself, Amber, and Brian is like, if you look back the last 15, 20 years, like the internet's evolved a lot. But if you think about like how we shop online, it hasn't. If anything, it's just like advertising is a little bit creepier in terms of like all these other inputs, whether it's like things that we're saying to our friends, things in our email is like influencing like display ads or like video ads that we see while we're browsing the web in a like non-opt-in way. But yet it's still like pretty hard to like find which products are the best, how to actually find the lowest price, how to actually buy the thing that you want. One thing you mentioned, which is kind of interesting, I'm curious both like everyone's thoughts. Like it seems like there is a lot more innovation happening in like Korea, China, in Southeast Asia around how people shop. And I think there is a lot of this like, oh, why doesn't like PDD style group buying work? Why doesn't Bilibili style like commerce with streamers work? I'm just curious, like why you guys think like some of these things which have taken off in Asia seem to work there, but like don't seem to work in US and Europe.
Do you want to go first?
Anyone?
I think, as somebody who actually grew up in Asia, I can already say that people in Asia just are so different in the way they think. And definitely, that leads to obviously like the way they consume. And I honestly think that, I don't know, like, how do you say this? People in Asia are like, when they're consuming, they're thinking more, I think, sort of collectively. And I feel like in the West, it's much more individualistic mindset. And that's why you're seeing more of like the creepy, in the West, I feel like this is a personalized ad or, this is for you. Yeah. Whereas I feel like in Asia, it's more of like a hive mindset of, okay, if everyone's buying this, then I'm going to buy this too. So I think that's at a very high level, an obvious one as to why the purchase sort of model in Asia is like so different from the West. But I'm curious.
Jumping off the back of that, like collective identity, like there's a political undercurrent in terms of like how that influences consumer behavior in Asia. Also having grown up in Asia and Hong Kong, that felt very obvious. And I was looking at the App Store, like top shopping apps, and it's interesting to see that a made in America shopping app is now in the top 10 currently in the App Store. So how like the political landscape is affecting maybe not the next generation of shoppers, but like the wider public to shop with more of a like nationalistic pride is interesting. But Rex, I was talking to you about your website and how there's like this element of chaos in it that feels so
organized chaos, I hope.
Organized chaos that Gen Z love. And it does remind me of some of the UX of the more like Asian shopping apps that feels chaotic. Yeah.
It's definitely not your average US venture capital.
When you go on an Asian website, it's just madness. Like there's no clean UI UX. It's just product after product and then price after price after price. And that's just the way that they're used to. So
yeah, I mean it is. I mean China really skipped desktop, and I think you see it in went straight to mobile, and you see it in the way that commerce is much more mobile centric. And Amazon is kind of just like their mobile app is like a shrunk down version of the desktop app. And, there's not that much kind of mobile first thinking. And we see kind of newcomers like Whatnot and others, make some good innovation, but I think that is still one difference. And then also, the cultural kind of norms that you guys are talking about in terms of, I don't know. I mean, in the US, I think we were just really taught online shopping is more utility driven. I think like 80% of people that go to Amazon.com end up completing a purchase. I think that's among Prime users, but it's just very kind of search driven, and no one has quite figured out that more kind of discovery driven, serendipitous form of shopping online that's more akin to the shopping mall of the 20th century. And maybe it'll be something like Flagship. Maybe Pinterest will finally nail commerce. Maybe Discord. Maybe Instagram Shop. I think, for my mind, it's always been the social platforms got really big in the US, and the way to go was sort of build social and have all the eyeballs, and then layer on commerce. Whereas in the West, in the East rather, they had a lot more success with kind of building social and commerce at the same time, because people were a lot more open to that.
What do you guys make of, there's this video from Douyin I think it was like a week ago, the woman who's literally showing products for like 3 seconds and then putting it down. And then I think she drove like something like over $100 million of sales in like a day. And like that's like the extreme version of like curator commerce, where people are literally just like watching her show like hundreds of items and literally going like buying them like as she's showing them. Versus like a US model where I think you mentioned when you're talking about Flagship, like this idea of like curator commerce seems like it hasn't picked up as much, and it is still a lot more driven by like advertising and things like that. Yeah.
Well, I think I love that word curator, because I think it gets at another key insight where, we all went crazy for the word creator, and, it used to be influencer. And I think curator is actually a better word, because for a while we were seeing every creator and their mom launch their own, beauty brand and their own skincare brand, and everyone was really trying to be their own brand. And I think you can see that fatigue even in celebrity brands. Like I remember seeing that there was some sort of post recently I saw on Instagram that Brad Pitt was launching a skincare line, and I read the comments and it was like, not another line. Like, I don't think we need this. Like, I'm exhausted. Too many celebrity brands. So it was interesting to see the kind of cultural shift there and the backlash to it. And really the only ones that really broke through were those that had kind of a net new insight, like Skims being kind of taking the insight that shapewear is outerwear, or Fenty doing kind of makeup for all colors. But I think many more of these creators are better curators than they are actually brand creators. And so I think, Jason, that's a good point where, what have they been doing the last 10 years? Influencing and directing people to trustworthy recommendations and brands and products. And so much of that has been lost with no attribution, or really hard to measure ROI. And so I think the better systems that can underpin that existing behavior are more compelling than this idea that everyone is going to be their own brand.
Yeah, it's also like the curator opportunity allows for so much democratization in terms of services that were previously the preserve of like higher net worth individuals. I think the expert is a good example of this, right? Where you can connect to an interior designer expert, you do your video call, like you get your home interior design. And I'm curious how that behavior of curator experts is going to bleed into other verticals. Like you can see that happening with stylists, like being able to connect with the everyday stylist, and how that's going to fuse into allowing people to earn money who are not necessarily creators or celebrities building a whole audience, but they're just really good at curating stuff, which I guess Instagram has kind of taught a whole generation of consumers to be excellent curators. Yeah, I'm curious, like, what do you think about that, and how, like, your experience, especially like working with like the luxury side of shopping, and how that kind of comes across.
I think that this is an interesting juxtaposition, because there's definitely those two facades to shopping. I want to go back to what Jason was talking about for the super quick 3-second show you a product, and I think that is very much still a reflection of the type of Asian shopping sites that you see, which are really just kind of like an online version of a catalog, which is, you go on there and then you're being shown a bunch of different products all at once. And I feel like that is, to me, I feel more like of a utilitarian where I'm looking for something, or I might not even know that I want something, but once you show it to me, I'm like, oh, right. I now remember that I was looking for, this spoon that, and that you just showed me, and now I'm going to buy it. Versus I think the curated approach is, like Rex was saying, I think born out of a much more sort of influencer culture, which is just so different. But it's funny because Asia is like this, I think, when you're doing the catalog style, super fast browsing, it's more for everyday goods that you're trying to buy. And then for the luxury stuff, there's not even curation anymore. Everybody collectively have in their heads the brands that they all agree are, a displaying of some kind of status of wealth, So yeah, like when I was working with Kering recently, all of their brands obviously, are represent that at least in Asia, and that's just such a big thing there. Where I'm not a historian, so I can't really track as to why that's been a thing now, but. Yeah, Asians just love to buy luxury goods that you can then display to other people to say, oh, here, it's a status symbol. It exists in the West as well, but definitely I think to a lesser degree. And I feel like you're seeing the West sort of pick up or evolutionize differently as well, especially with Gen Z. They're all about either stealth wealth or they're going the rebellious angle where they just don't even want to support these kinds of luxury brands at all, which you're not seeing reflected as much in the East just yet.
Yeah, I think one thing. I was an angel investor in this company called Heist, which started off as like a sneaker blog in Berlin, and I think one thing that they saw was that like a lot of these like luxury couture like houses were having a really hard time like reaching and resonating with younger audiences, and so they really did rely on like third party, whether it was like media companies to try to like make those brands seem cool, or I know when we were at Riot, like we obviously did the thing with Louis Vuitton, and then now you look at name your LVMH brand or Kering brand, like each one is signed, like Le Seraphim was like LVMH, I think, and Hypen is Prada. Like every single member of New Jeans has like a different like luxury brand that they're associated with. And so it seems like people are leaning a lot harder into this, like, how do you associate your product and brand with things that resonate with younger people so that they'll actually think of it in a positive light, despite like the general trend being like people moving away from like things that are super expensive or super flashy and trying to be more low key. So it's interesting to see kind of how that trend has evolved over time.
Yeah, and then I think like to layer on the kind of gaming perspective. Yeah, name your brand that has not shown up yet in Roblox or Fortnite. And curious what you guys think about where, this is going to evolve, like luxury brands or any brand, like experimenting with digital goods or digital twins. Rex, any thoughts on like?
Yeah, I mean, we've probably all seen those headlines of, wasn't it a Gucci bag in Roblox that was selling for more than, the actual physical Gucci item. So, I mean, yeah, I think luxury is so interesting because it's all about status, right? And status and scarcity, which are closely related. And I think you can have that as much online as you can offline. I mean, with who knows, what will happen in 5 years or 10 years after Apple's Vision Pro and with more AR and VR, and maybe we're all spending more time in avatars or in game worlds or just kind of more immersive experiences. And I think I saw some stat that, I don't know, 70% of Gen Z, or I'm not making up the number there, but cared as much. Maybe it was of Roblox users specifically, but it was sort of some statistic I saw. It was either 70% of Gen Z or 70% of Gen Z Roblox users, but some high proportion of folks cared more about what their Roblox avatar was wearing than their offline one. And so, I'm sure that'll continue. And we also see huge tailwinds with Gen Z and luxury, where I think the average Gen Z buys luxury for the first time at like age 17. And for millennials, it was like age 19 or 20. And I think really the reason for that is this kind of like treat yourself mentality, where it's kind of like, well, the world's ending and like capitalism is terrible and climate change is happening. And like, it's this kind of like nihilism that undergirds a lot of the trends we read about with quiet quitting and Nepo baby backlash and all of this. But it kind of is this idea of treat yourself and might as well buy the nice, Prada bag or whatever. So I think that'll continue both offline and in digital item form.
I mean, as a I would say somebody who my online assets are worth a lot more than my real world assets. As in, I've literally spent like $70,000 on an NFT in the past, but I've never bought anything nearly as expensive in real life. This is something that I think I didn't truly come to understand until COVID happened, and where I think that being online and from playing the Nintendo Switch to going into Decentraland and things like this made me realize that so for truly the power of digital goods and why they can be appealing. But I think that being said, you need something, whether it's the blockchain or something else, something needs to come in and insert artificial scarcity, because just like in the real world, a Birkin bag is expensive because they're rare. So how do you, basically in a digital world where you could technically just duplicate infinite 3D Birkin bags, how do you sort of introduce that kind of artificial scarcity, which is something that I personally find so fascinating about the blockchain as well. And it was interesting to see sort of this experiment of all these luxury brands come into the Web3 space during the last few years and try to, establish their presence and how well they were doing. But I think that, within that sort of internet niche, there's such a specific culture that makes it really hard for a luxury brand to just come in and do well immediately, because you have to also, sort of understand how the technology works, or, the whole ethos as to why people are consuming a certain way. And that's not something I think that a lot of big brands have fully understood yet. But I'd be curious to see how that evolves going forward.
I think one thing you mentioned about the Birkin bag and the scarcity versus value, our friend Felicia from Play Ventures actually wrote this whole, I think it was like a thread online about how Hermes actually they fully gamified their shopping customer client relations process, where it isn't just about spending the most money. It's about going and sequentially buying all the things and leveling up your status within their client base over time to be able to buy one through the store directly versus going on the secondhand market or going to a secondhand shop to buy. I think that's interesting because I think a lot of kids they're growing up on Roblox and they're growing up in these environments where it isn't just about spending a lot of money on something rare. It's about doing a lot of things to earn the right to level up your characters and have more access to different parts of the world that doesn't exist for everyone. And so I'm curious how you guys think about that kind of gameplay mentality around other elements of shopping or engaging with brands and things like that.
I think this is reminding me of Animal Crossing being a really, really good example of this. So during COVID, everybody was playing Animal Crossing, and sort of the only way to upgrade your island is either through putting in time or and through time you can collect these things then, and if you can collect enough of these things, then you can get one of these things. And so when you sort of the ultimate display of wealth, let's say in Animal Crossing, isn't through any sort of direct financial input, it's all through time. So if you go to somebody's island, it's super beautiful and they have golden bridges and stone lions everywhere, that they have spent a lot of time in this game that this is not really replicatable anywhere else. I find that super interesting in how basically in a digital world you can turn either it's a financial aspect or by using gameplay mechanics to sort of show your status as a result.
Yeah, I think that's something that modern, the brands of today are missing, because it isn't just about how much time you spend in the in-store experience or how much time you spend playing mini games on Chanel or anything. It's just about your dollar amount or your social clout. And that feels antiquated in terms of next generation. It should be time invested in creating experiences that branch off the brand. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who takes that on in the next 12 months.
Yeah,
I guess. Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
I was just going to say we have to talk about resale. Obviously, Rex, you've spoken written a lot about this and how it's evolved, and obviously it's prolific behavior within Discord, and I guess still top apps in the App Store are GOAT, are Depop, and so what's your latest thoughts on like resale opportunity?
Oh yeah, I mean, I love resale, and yeah, just wrote a piece recently about resale because I did this investment in a young woman building in the resale space, and I think it just is such an opportunity that is unsolved by technology still in so many ways. And what I mean by that is, like most of us don't really want to upload photos of our wrinkly clothing and catalog them and organize them on Poshmark and have 37, back and forth messages with buyers and sellers. And it's just such a cumbersome experience. And so what is the way to fix that? I mean, I think it's challenging. One way you can do it is sort of, can we ingest data from people on what they own and sort of their closets, and then make it easier for solving the supply problem and easier to offload stuff. But a challenge is just matching supply and demand in these marketplaces. I mean, resale is growing 11 times faster than broader retail. It is, I think, one of the biggest shifts of this generation as we see sustainability move into commerce and people want to power the more circular economy. But the right business models and the right technology haven't really been built. Poshmark, I don't know if you guys have used it. It feels very like Craigslist in the 2000s to me. I think there needs to be something better. And I don't know. I mean, I'm looking around my apartment here, and when my partner and I were furnishing this place, we would always say to each other, we'd go see a Restoration Hardware dining table for $5,000, and we're like, surely somewhere in New York City, someone is willing to has this table and is willing to part with it for $2,000, $2,500. You know what I mean? It's kind of, but how do you match that supply and that latent supply with the demand? So I think there will be better ways in the future for us to have inventories online of things we own, have people able to bid on them, handle a lot of the sort of frictions, and yeah, maybe LLMs are a great use case actually for, actually, can you have a little AI chatbot that chats with a bunch of sellers on your behalf and then agrees to one and handles a lot of the logistics. So it's a very greenfield opportunity in my mind. And we've seen a number of kind of billion-dollar companies built in the startup world, but I don't think we've really seen the end-to-end resale platform that I think can be a $5 billion or $10 billion commerce company.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with shopping, especially on the visual side, is like in a lot of cases, so the Amazon case where the exact product, the brand and model, Amazon is the best solution. And it's going to be hard pressed to beat Amazon. But most of the time when we're shopping, whether it's for clothing, for furniture, like we don't know exactly what we want to buy. We have a general idea of like some characteristics, but if you think about like how visual platforms have evolved, like they have become like, even we were talking about Pinterest, like it's a very ad driven, and you're being shown a lot of things that is just like the highest bidder is trying to get in front of you based on your demographic data, not necessarily based on like visual cues that are tied to things that you might want to look for. And I know like on the patron front, like we're really excited about companies that are trying to innovate more on like the visual search and try to create like a better shopping experience where you don't know exactly what you want, but you have a rough idea. And then it helps match that to like items which exist in the real world, whether it's a new product or whether it's resale. And I think the thing you mentioned about resale is like I think on the one end of the commerce spectrum, there's like Shein and this idea of like disposable commerce, where literally we're ruining the planet and people are buying things that last like for a couple of wears. And on the complete other side of the spectrum is this idea that you buy fewer things, but you buy better things. And at some point in time, you probably don't want to wear it anymore, but it can still last for a long time. And so how do you get that into the hands of like other people who would want to buy that, use that, wear that, what have you? And I think like part of the problem is like indexing the supply side. But I think an even bigger problem right now is like organizing it so that people on the demand side can even find it. Because if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, it's like very hard to search for it.
Okay, so online. I was literally talking about this the other day with my friend, and I have a lot of ideas about this. So, AI is a huge thing right now. First of all, I'm sure somewhere out there's a company that should, disguise itself as a note-taking app where, just sort of you can record your real-life conversations with your friends, but simultaneously you're actually also training, an AI model of version of yourself. And then, eventually you'll create this network of, trained AI models of individual people. And then there should be a social network based on this so that, if Jason's my friend, I can summon Jason. Let's say Jason's birthday is coming up and, or I just want to know specifically about Jason's taste. And this AI model, let's assume has heard, endless conversations. So, they have a pretty good idea about what he likes, what he doesn't like. So then I can talk to his model basically, and have a conversation with him and be like, in this scenario, like what would Jason most likely be purchasing? Or his birthday's coming up, what should I get him this year? It's like, oh well, I heard him talking a lot about this specific thing this year. And so I think that that's a huge opportunity. But then obviously I think that the evolution of that too is maybe going to be close to what we're seeing now, is that then companies are going to catch on to this, and then they're going to start doing product placement where they're going to pay these models to subtly drop in like, oh, tell this person to go buy this product. But, there has to be some line between there because I think right now, and even in the real world, where we trust, sort of product recommendations the most are from people that we know in real life. And so I think that this is the sort of like a next best thing that we can do to use technology to sort of mimic that in a world.
I think that's
a world where
I think that's really interesting.
Right?
I also think, just to your point on search, Jason, I think we're seeing much more search that is contextual in nature, where it is less me searching black jeans and more me searching going out outfit. And, Shein actually does this pretty well. Like, I think their recommendations are pretty impressive. So, that'll be more, I think, the future as well, where it is just kind of more, shopping based on those things. And I talked to a lot of brands who are like, oh, when it comes to resale, they're like, my item or my garment is meant to be a forever, purchase or something. And I'm like, that is great, but unfortunately that is not where like consumer behavior is, right? I think that might be true, but a lot of people might say, well, I posted it in like 3 grid posts and like, I kind of wanted a new winter jacket for next winter to do something different. So I think we're going to see that circular economy spin faster, but it just needs the right company to remove friction from it.
I think that this also ties into this idea of like girl math. Like you were making that behavior of like, okay, well, yeah, I will buy this designer thing. I'll wear it 3 times and then I'll put it on the real and they'll come pick it up for me. And I have definitely that is a behavior change for me, where now I'm like, okay, if I buy this, I know I'm going to wear its time and then I'm going to get it on the real. But there's still so much friction in actually getting it to the real and then creating that behavior loop. But Emily, what you were saying around like having a digital twin that like I can speak to your twin and like know what you like and understand your taste better makes me think of like Venmo and back in the day when Instagram had that feature where you could see like what all of your friends were liking. And that was just the most addictive thing, because it is so addictive to like see what people are doing on Venmo and like see what your friends are liking.
Or what if we all had digital twins who knew about things that we already bought and then we don't want anymore, and without us having to do it, and
they just like communicate with each other. Yeah.
And then they make the transaction. They're like, great, Amber, I'll buy this bag from you because I'm looking for it and I know you don't want it anymore.
Exactly.
No, I think that's literally what I mean by these like AI bots, where the LLMs can do that on the resale site, and it might just say, maybe the AI bot is named Rachel or something, and you get a ping from Rachel, and it's like, hey, like someone was interested in your like Woolrich jacket for $600, and you're like, well, I wasn't gonna get rid of it till next winter, but like $600 is pretty good because I only got it for $700, so like, and you just say sure, and then she's like, great, like prepaid label coming to your house. You know what I mean? I think that stuff is super interesting. And and to your point, Amber, on girl math, I think resale at checkout is going to be table stakes because, BNPL drives up conversions 20 to 30% at checkout. But yeah, when I go to buy that $700 Woolrich jacket, if it says estimated resale value $500, I'm like, great, I'm only spending $200, right? Like in that moment of friction at checkout, I actually just say, of course, like I'll do this. And yeah, maybe I can then sell it for easier later, but I think every brand wants AOVs to go up and cart abandonment rates to go down and conversion to improve. And that is such a no-brainer in my mind.
It should totally be a checkout, 100%. Like, yes, my average orders would go up way more if I knew what the resale value.
We would spend a lot more.
You're rationalizing how much you're spending on that day.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah, cool.
I guess, what do you guys think about this idea of like renting things versus owning them? Because I think that's also a challenge for a lot of people, is this idea that like, oh, well, like there is some like comfort or status associated with like, hey, like I'm owning this. It's not like an article of clothing that I'm renting to use one time. On the flip side is like, there's going to be certain types of items. Like I think like our kids, I have 2 daughters that are 6 and 7 and they love skiing, but just by nature of them growing every year. Like they're going to grow out of their ski boots, they're going to grow out of their skis, but we do it enough where like it doesn't make sense to rent it like each time we go. So like I buy skis and ski boots for them, but then like the next year I have to like sell it back to either the store or like there's certain categories of items that it feels like it probably should just be like a subscription, like a kid's ski subscription. And then I just like pay every year and get like close to new, like best gear. And there's like, it's more affordable for everyone else who wants to use it as well. I'm just curious, like how you guys have thought about kind of like rental models versus like.
I think about this all the time because I'm a digital nomad. So I have not, had like a physical home or location for the past 3 years. And I run into this problem all the time where I'm like, okay, well now I'm here and it's cold and I need to buy a jacket. And I wish but I just bought a jacket 3 months ago, like a puffer jacket 3 months ago, but I'm not going to bring that with me because basically, we've been trained to only travel with a carry-on suitcase at all times. So it's always, I always joke that my most valuable asset is luggage space. And so if it's not, so it's always a battle about how much does this physical thing actually worth to me versus like whether or not I actually want to bring it around, which is why I keep thinking about this idea of, why digital assets are really cool. And then right now, I think there's a huge dissonance where we haven't figured out a good way to translate digital assets into real world assets. But let's say, a luxury brand, which has a powerful network around the world. And I talk about this with my nomad friends all the time. Let's say there's like Louis Vuitton bag where I can purchase the digital version of it. But having this digital version of the bag, if I land in Paris, then they know that, okay, I'm in Paris and now I have access to, they'll send it to me to my hotel in Paris and then I can use it for a week and then I can send it back. And then, when I go to Milan, the same thing will happen. This is, and would I pay a premium for this? I think that I would. And this is something that I talk about with my nomad friends all the time, in terms of like creating this, I guess, hybrid network of digital assets, where I would say currently, at least more luxury brands have that kind of global network where they do have a physical store or the sort of supply within, every different corner of the earth, basically. But this is something that I think about all the time because I think there's just so much waste currently going around with people buying something and then either leaving it behind or not. Myself, I'm lazy too. So even though, yes, the concept of resale is really great to me, realistically, I'm not going to actually go and, put it up on Depop or something,
Yeah.
Right. Well, Japan Airlines earlier this year, they trialed that clothing rental with Uniqlo. So if you land in Tokyo, you basically get a bunch of clothes. Yeah. And they just rent it to you for inbound travelers. So I think that behavior is coming. And I think one of the challenges that retailers have is they don't actually have a true global view on that customer. So if you're here and you're buying something in Toronto and then you're going to Taiwan, that is actually where blockchain could be very interesting because then you get a much more like transparent view of a customer, like globally. And yeah, I agree. Like the most valuable thing being your luggage space is just so true.
Yeah, I think that goes back to just like understanding your customer and like what they actually like want, like what is valuable to their life and how do you actually like offer your product in a way that meets that. Cause I think that example about like traveling different places and getting the handbag there, the reality is like, if you just buy a bunch of handbags and 99% of the time it's sitting in your closet, like the utility is around obviously like the physical utility of like carrying whatever you need to carry, but then also like having the bag when you're going to whatever events or what have you. That's not too similar from, I know we face this problem at Riot with League where we sell a bunch of skins. There's no way to show your skins to anyone. You can only show one skin at a time when you're playing that champion in the game. And then there's like no other, and then over time, like you buy more skins and then you just have this like endless catalog of skins that you no longer use. And maybe it reminds you of like when you played League like 10 years ago, but like that's not necessarily like how you would want to use that, or the value you get out of the product doesn't equate to like how you actually get access to it. And so I think like being more creative around like selling people and giving people products in a way that matches like how they want to use it is something that like could be a big opportunity because it seems like we're stuck in these models that have been around for like 100 years. Yeah.
I remember back when I was building Zyper, one of the things we did with Gucci was allow them with their fan community we sort of trialed this. We presented it to them that they could basically have an AR sticker of like a cool Gucci logo, and anyone in the top fan community would be able to just superimpose that sticker like onto a picture of them in a white t-shirt, just like through an AR sticker that was like 100% realistic. And it was quite terrifying to them at the time. But I feel like that is obviously where it's going to go. Because if I just want to flex in the changing room, like, because that is a massive behavior too. It's like, you just go into the Balenciaga changing room, take a photo up on social. Great. Don't even need to buy this anymore. But I think the idea that like you'll be able to have, like AR, like I think is still little early, but that you will be able to buy, more digital stickers and items from brands that, get superimposed over feels like a natural evolution where digital fashion doesn't yet have the platform for you to show your digital dresses or,
Yeah, I think that's like and people ask a lot about kind of like when is digital fashion going to emerge, or like when's the right time? And I think like for Fortnite and for League of Legends, like it makes a ton of sense because people are spending so much time in those games. And even if it's not necessarily like you personally, like as the champion or as the character you're playing, like it is the style of that character represents like who you are and how you play. And so it did make a lot of sense to either work with real world fashion brands or just to create a lot more personalization around like how those characters existed in that world. I think the challenge with a lot of the early attempts on kind of the more pure play fashion side outside of gaming is that there isn't yet that place that people actually go and they care how they look. And I think until there is like, and I think that's why like AR works, because if it's just a filter that you can put on Instagram, Snap, wherever, TikTok, people do see you, and it's people that you care about seeing you. But if it's like in other places where people won't see you, then it doesn't have that utility. It'll be interesting to see like what type of platforms can evolve that will become that place. So whether it's another game like League, Fortnite, I guess now Valorant is that for sure. But how that will emerge outside of gaming is will be interesting.
Yeah,
to see.
I mean, I think that this goes back to, I know the world is hating on blockchain and the metaverse right now, but it's really truly because there's no good display layer for it. So the infrastructure already exists, right? That's the whole point of the blockchain. It's not, because it's a buzzy word or whatever. So right now that I own all these assets or whatever, in the future, let's say if everybody just agreed, okay, we're all going to use, these Apple ridiculous headphones, which I'm sure that's actually not the future, but let's just say hypothetically this is the case. And then in there, you can display these things. Then I think across the world, suddenly everybody's going to get it and be like, oh, and why is this different from, having a skin in like Valorant or League is because, they're different companies. So I can't, if I have something in, this game, I can't show it, that's not transferable to another game. And that's like the problem with like Web 2 digital assets, which is that they're not transferable to another realm or, they're centralized, right? But the whole decentralized concept is so that, it goes back to people that you care to see can see you, with this. And so the infrastructure already exists, but right now I don't think anybody has found a good, unified display layer for this to exist. And that's why it hasn't worked yet.
Yeah, no interoperability. Yeah. Well, I know we're kind of like coming up on time. Any hot takes or discussion points we haven't touched on, Jason?
I guess like how do you guys how have your own shopping habits changed in like the last 12 months? Are you still shopping online the same way? Are you still using the same apps and sites? I'm just curious,
I return a lot of stuff. I think more than I used to. And I my partner and I joke that Jeff Bezos is going to catch on to us because we just I feel like get so much stuff on Amazon, and I try, I buy 4 things to see which size I like, and then I return the other 3. And I mean, Amazon, to its credit, has made it so much easier, but I'm like, they can't be doing very well based on us as customers. And so that's one new habit, I would say. Just a lot more kind of mimicking what I would have bought offline. Let me just buy 3 sizes and then try it and return. I think that's kind of the main shift on my end. And then trying out new apps. And I think I'm still kind of enjoying the like omni-channel, see it in the store, maybe in person, and then buy it online or vice versa.
Yeah, I think the shipping thing, Amazon, at least like when I use it now, if I just want to return stuff, like to drop it off at like a UPS store, it costs like $1 now. So I think they're slowly starting to like disincentivize that behavior. But the reality is like they made it table stakes for everyone to offer free shipping and returns. And if you think about the grand scheme of like what's good for the environment, like obviously like disposable clothing production is horrible, but shipping stuff back and forth is probably just as bad, if not worse. But that's like the default consumer behavior now. So I think it's something that everyone has to deal with. Yeah.
It does feel like the days of free shipping and returns may be over. Yeah. I think for me, very exciting. This year was the first year I went to Costco, and big fan of Costco. And I think that there is an opportunity to create more of these digital member clubs. Like, what does a digital version of Costco look like? There's a newsletter I'm on called Celeb, where you basically share your receipts of like what you've bought. And at the end, everybody pools their discounts. So, when you buy something and you get like 10% off or 15% off, like to come back, there's just this huge list of like aggregated discounts for this like growing like network of friends. So I think, Costco is a new behavior for me. Here for it.
Best. It's the best.
What about you, Emily?
I've never been a big shopper just ever in my life. Shopping kind of stresses me out. I'm the type of person where when I go into a store, and you'll never find me just online shopping for no reason. Like if I'm shopping, it's because I have something very specific in mind and I'm going to purchase it. Yeah, so I would say, if anything, my shopping has probably dwindled in the past few years just because of, how much I'm traveling. And the more you travel, you're like, okay, the last thing I need is just physical stuff, because then there's just more things for you to worry about. And so, I probably my shopping habits have gone to maybe more sort of like online, as in literally digital assets. But then I think, okay, if I buy this, it's not going to be, taking up extra space anywhere. And then I think that if there's, more and more products developed out there, like the lovely AI concept that we're talking about, where it's, trusted sources that can help me better, spend less time browsing and more time accurately getting things that I want and need, that would be really amazing. So I am looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. It's like shopping should become more efficient over time, and you should be buying better stuff that you have to replace less often. But I feel like it's actually become less efficient and you're buying more stuff that breaks faster. And so I think one thing, like whenever I am when I want to buy something new, I feel like searching online to like read lists and rankings and stuff, it feels like at this point, like 90% of those are like paid, or like sponsors are writing those lists. And so I really do appreciate when I find out that like somebody that I'm friends with is like really into some particular thing that I'm looking into buying. And then I rely like much more heavily on like them having spent like dozens of hours doing research or buying a bunch of things and sharing their learnings. It's surprising that there still isn't a great way for that to be organized online, but here we are. Like I still think like a lot of those more serendipitous conversations have driven, like, for example, I recently bought and built for the first time a mechanical keyboard. And it turns out we had like 3 founders in our portfolio that are like super deep into that and had a lot of good tips and good entry points to like get into it. And I think I really value like having those points of discovery where you can dive into something new, but feel like very informed about it because of someone you trust.
What I found actually was useful recently was that, I'm getting more into skincare now. And then so I'll talk to friends who have really amazing skin, and then they'll recommend products and things like that. And then I might buy some, try some. But I found that, using ChatGPT has been really helpful, not in asking it what I should buy, but I will literally be like, okay, I have these products, tell me, which ones are redundant, or, what order should I use these products? And then it will actually, tell me what each product is good for. Like, what ingredients this one has and what that ingredient does, why that's good for skin. And then it'll also rearrange it. And when I add a new product, I'll be like, okay, I just bought this one, keeping in the same chat. I feel like I just bought this product. Where would you slot it into my routine? And then it will actually tell me, okay, well, this one is redundant to this product. But if you really wanted to use both of them, then you can put it, you can use it after you use this one. So that's something that I've found has been super helpful.
Yeah,
Very
I think
cool.
like
now I'm going to try that.
Yeah,
post-purchase. So like, how do you get more out of the products you already bought?
Because then you're not paranoid like, I'm getting upsold by something, but it's more just based on, just like the ingredient and why it's good and where I should use it. Yeah.
Maximize utility. Very cool.
Cool. Yeah, I think that we covered a bunch of topics. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Chatting with
everyone. So energizing.
I'll be expecting a report for each and one of you guys' skincare routines updated tomorrow.
I'm gonna paste it into ChatGPT tonight. I can't wait.
I do not want my skincare. I'll ask my wife Anne. She is insane, but like mine is probably the absolute worst.
I'm just gonna learn that everything I pay a ton of money for does nothing and is redundant. So that's what I'm gonna do. Awesome. Well, enjoy the weekend, guys.